Hi, my name is Lynn and I'm studying to become a B.C.B.A. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Unit 9, which is the Science Practitioner model. This particular unit was extremely long. It had a really interesting teacher or instructor whose last name was Gyoki, I think. She's a really good co-instructor, and if you get a chance to take a class, if she's teaching your class in particular, I would highly suggest her, just because all of her videos are pretty entertaining. She does a lot of referencing and whatnot. Regardless though, this particular unit we're going to split into two videos. The first half of the unit that I'll be discussing is all about literature review, how to research, and the overall idea of research and the science practitioner model. The second part of the video is going to be over articles. So basically the anatomy of an article, the rigor it goes under, how to get it published, what standards we follow with it, and how we apply it to ABA in general. So just the second part of that. So the second video of this particular Unit 9, it sounds long because it is. The first half of it discusses how to even research and what the science practitioner model is. So it's kind of like two topics within the actual unit itself. And that being said, let's just jump into it. So this unit starts off with discussing the difference between ABA research and ABA practice. We've covered this before in previous units, but just to remember, ABA research is the development and experimentation of validated procedures, basically. So we are trying to develop validated procedures to address problems of social significance. So we want to make sure that we have all the data we need to support the fact that something is effective, right? Be it for a group of people or an individual. Usually with ABA, it's going to be an individual. That being said, ABA practice is the implementation or application of these validated procedures from ABA research to the consumer, which is also called service delivery. So most of us in the field are in the field of service delivery of ABA. So we are not necessarily doing research, but we do create a lot of data from what we're doing, right? If you're not taking data, you're not doing ABA. That is true on both sides of research and within practice. So no matter what you're doing, you're always taking data, but one has a direct effect towards an individual, the other has a direct effect to the field at large, that being research. Just remember that ABA practice is an evidence-based practice, which is why the ABA research is as it is. The unit then goes on to discussing how research is accessing existing literature and utilizing what you find in that literature to apply to your interventions. So we have to remember that there are the 7 basic concepts of ABA, and one of them is being conceptually systematic, which basically connects everything we do back to experimented on items that we have vigorously tested and have shown have valid procedures, right? So our procedures are valid because we have data and we've experimented upon them before and we know that they work. So being systematically or conceptually systematic means that everything that we're doing in service delivery is directly connected to that research that's been published. That being said, one thing that they mention within this unit that they really try to hit home with is the fact that your interventions are only as effective as the literature that you base it off of, right? So if there's only 1 or 2 research papers off of an idea that you have and you try to reference them, it's not going to be as strong as some other things. Like let's say you want to look into equestrian therapy, which is like horse therapy for people with ASD within ABA versus like a token economy within ABA. Well, usually token economies have been rather rigorously tested versus like horse therapy for ABA, not as tested because that's actually a little bit further out of our wheelhouse versus a token economy was actually developed within ABA and engineered to become an item that we can effectively use to change behavior. You want to make sure that when you do research, you can find a lot of articles that you can kind of cross-reference and see how effective something is. From there, they discuss literature review. So it's incorporating literature into practice. Again, you just want to make sure that you have a lot. Your programming is only as good as the literature you base it off of. And if you're stuck or if you're unable to do this, I mean, like if you're unable to research, try to delegate, like try to make sure that you have the time to sit down, look at the data that you have, and then look into the concepts that you want to actually utilize within your intervention and make sure that you find what you need. If you don't find what you need, that's another question to ask, like, Should you be going this way? Or is there something related to it that you can actually search with? There is a database accessible through the B.C.B.A web portal. So they have a ton of articles within ABA that you can utilize this particular portal and find articles that have been recently published. If you ever have issues with overcoming paywalls, because there's plenty of times that economic journals will post things, but then they'll only give you the abstract of something. One suggestion, which I thought was amazing, was just contact the researcher directly. So when you find an article, they will always post who published it or who wrote the article. If you contact them directly, more often than not, they're more than happy to share their research because they're happy someone's interested in what they had to say, because they put a lot of effort into their experimentation, into their publication, so they want you to be able to read it. And if you're being stopped by a paywall, then, you can go ahead and go there. Another thing that they suggested was Google Scholar. With personal experience, I know that Google Scholar is a really good jumping off board for me to try and find certain things, but it can be somewhat difficult sometimes because Google Scholar will also, more often than not, lead you to places that have paywalls. So just be aware of that. But Google Scholar tries to post as many publications as possible, right? But sometimes they just don't have access to that particular article. They know it exists, right? And they will post it if it's available, but sometimes it's just being held by one journal or another or a publisher. Now, of course, from Google Scholar, we can lead into what's called Boolean operators. So when you're doing research, you have to know what you're looking for, right? And you need to know how to ask the great World Wide Web specifically what you're looking for. Boolean operators are symbols or conjunctions that can either combine or exclude certain keywords in the search bar. So when you're searching for an article within a search bar, there are Boolean operators. So let's go over them. The first one is and. If you put and anywhere between two concepts, that means that it joins whatever concepts you have. So let's say you want to do potty or toilet training and token economies. If you put and in the middle, as long as it has that and, it will only bring up concepts with both terms included in that. From there, we have not, N-O-T, just means it excludes, right? So potty training, not token economies, means all the articles that show up will show only potty training things that specifically don't have token economies associated with it, right, in that article. Or is another one, OR, and that one is inclusive of either or terms, okay? So you could do toileting or potty training, and then it will look up all the articles that have either toileting or potty training or both. After that, there's asterisk. So the little star key, so to speak, the asterisk, is a root word. So basically, if you use punish and then you put an asterisk next to it, what it will look up is anything that says punisher, punishing, punishment. Anything that has a root word of punish will be found and shown to you. So it's a really good way to kind of to generalize a single word that you're kind of trying to look for, but trying to see where it lies. That asterisk will say, this is the root word. Look for other things that have this particular word in it. From there, if you put quotes around the concept, so if you put token economy and you put it in quotes, it will specifically only search that exact phrase. So first off, make sure you spell it right. But then if someone says token econ in their paper, it's not going to come up because it's not the exact phrase of token economy. Not that anyone would put econ in a research paper, but I digress. After that, they go into parentheses. So if you have concepts in a parentheses, it combines search parameters. So let's say you're looking for a differential reinforcement of alternative behavior or differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior, so DRA or a DRI. Remember, you're also using that or because you want to see it. And autism, it can have either DRA or DRI, but it must have autism. So DRA or DRI in parentheses, and it has the or in there. And then outside of the parentheses, it says and autism. It means it must have one of those differential reinforcers. Doesn't matter which one, but it must have autism associated with it. So that's a really good way to narrow a lot of things down because you're looking to see what the research says about either of those concepts and where it's applied, which in this example would be autism. And so you can guarantee that one thing is going to be there, which is the autism section or context, but you are not constrained between a DRA or a DRI. That's how that Boolean operator works. So when you are developing a research question, you want to make sure that not only do you have kind of a question that can be answered with a yes, this shows that there's a marked improvement or change, or no, it doesn't. But you want to specify the functions of what you're doing. So like, does a token economy increase success within toileting, so to speak? And even success is somewhat objective, technically, right? But does it increase desired outcome of whatever? And from specifying functions, you got to use technical terms when you're discussing it. And so you have to use technical terms, and you want to make sure that you're not being vague. You're not saying like, what can increase success in toileting, right? Like, you want to be able to test something specific that you're going after. So again, with the whole like, does a token economy increase more independent responses in toilet training? That's a yes, no question, yes, but you can actually provide context and data to support one or another outcome, right? So you don't want to be vague about those. The next section of the unit talks about the anatomy of an article and what it goes through as far as like standards and rigor and how we utilize that. So that's going to be in the next video, and hopefully by separating it, I can actually go into a little more depth, because this unit went into a ton of depth of uses of articles, the anatomy of an article, how we use it, what standards they go by, everything like that. It was a long unit. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. If you find any corrections that you feel compelled to tell me, please let me know as well in the comments. And until the next video, I'll see you around.